What is your idea of school? Is it the hum of curiosity, the thrill of learning something new, the sound of laughter echoing through the hallways, the joy of a child discovering their passion? For many, school is more than just a place to learn. It's a second home, a space where friendships are made, where dreams take their first breath, where the future begins. It is meant to be a haven of safety, a place of joy, of opportunity. But for many children in America, school is no longer just a place of learning. It has become a place of uncertainty, where the question is no longer if a shooting will happen, but when.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
Breaking news out of Iowa,
Georgia.
Connecticut,
Houston.
Virginia,
Cleveland, Ohio.
Florida.
Of California.
An active shooter was
An active
reported.
shooting at the high school.
Diving for cover in a classroom.
shooting.
School shooting.
Shooting at a high school.
School shooting there
School
in the
shooting
high
that
school.
left 10 people
Patients
dead.
with
Students
gunshot
shot and
wounds.
injured
Several
inside
students
a
were wounded.
high school.
19 children were killed
27
and
victims,
2 adults.
20 children,
There
7
are
adults.
casualties.
Numerous fatalities.
Mass casualties.
America is struggling to make sense of something so senseless.
Lockdowns, active shooter drills, and tragic headlines have replaced the innocence of childhood. To understand how we got here, we need to look back. Many believe Columbine was the first school shooting to shake the nation, but the roots of this crisis stretch further. The first mass shooting to capture national attention happened decades earlier at the University of Texas. On August 1st, 1966, when 25-year-old former Marine and UT student rounded up an arsenal and supplies and climbed to the observation deck of the university's main building.
It was then that terror rained down from the tower.
He killed 14 people and wounded 31 others before being shot and killed by police. This was the moment America first glimpsed the horror of a school under siege. But it would not be the last. On that tragic day in Columbine, Colorado, 2 12th grade students killed 12 classmates and 1 teacher.
They said the gunman went from one area of the school to another, shooting students as they went.
In addition to the 13 lives lost, 21 others were injured by gunfire, and 3 more were hurt while trying to escape. Columbine's impact was devastating, and it marked a turning point in American society, inspiring countless copycat attacks and becoming synonymous with modern school shootings. Despite the many tragedies that followed, Columbine remains one of the deadliest school shootings in U.S. history. School shootings have become a grim reality in America. But how does the U.S. compare with the rest of the world? In a CNN analysis published in 2018, they explored this very question. The analysis examined school shootings that occurred between January 2009 and May 2018 across the G7 countries, 7 of the world's most advanced economies, including Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The findings revealed that during that period, there were no school shootings in Italy, the United Kingdom, or Japan. Canada and France each reported 2 incidents, while Germany reported 1. In stark contrast, the United States experienced an alarming 288 school shootings. This means that the U.S. has had 57 times as many school shootings as the other 6 major industrialized nations combined. This staggering disparity illustrates the unique prevalence of gun violence in American schools. But why are school shootings such a uniquely American phenomenon? Understanding the issue of school shootings in America requires both internal reflection and an outside perspective. To gain insight from beyond U.S. borders, I spoke with Dr. Noah Schwartz, an assistant professor of political science at the University of Fraser Valley in British Columbia. With expertise in public policy, gun control policy, and social movements in both Canada and the United States, Dr. Schwartz provides a unique lens on the factors driving this uniquely American crisis. He explains how the two countries took dramatically different approaches to gun control, leading them down two opposite paths.
Gun control as we know it today is actually more recent than a lot of Canadians think. Before the 1970s, it was pretty easy. You could go to a hardware store and buy a gun in Canada. You could even own fully automatic weapons. But after a couple of school shootings in the 70s, the laws started to get tighter. And it was really once again, a school shooting, this time at a university, that really created Canada's contemporary gun control infrastructure.
That school shooting was the 1989 Montreal Massacre, an anti-feminist attack at a polytechnic school where a gunman murdered 14 women. The tragedy was a turning point, leading Canada to establish stricter gun laws.
And that prompted the creation of Canada's contemporary gun control laws, which include licensing, a regular background check. So rather than getting a background check just at the point of purchase, Canadian gun owners are run through the Canadian police database regularly to make sure that they haven't committed a crime. Things like safe storage laws to make it hard for example, a young person to steal their parents' gun, which we see in a lot of cases.
At the same time that Canada was tightening gun restrictions, the United States was heading in the opposite direction. Rather than responding to gun violence with stricter regulations, many states moved to loosen their gun laws.
So Canada went on a different policy trajectory, when at the same time in the United States, right after the 80s, we see at the state level, states loosening their gun control laws with concealed carry. We see, yes, there was a sort of an assault weapons ban in the United States under Clinton in the 90s, but at that same time, handgun sales are taking off, and we see a lot more handguns. So it's sort of two opposite policy trajectories that have taken us, I think, in two different directions, certainly since the 1970s.
Beyond differences in gun laws, the way firearms are perceived and integrated into culture varies greatly between Canada and the United States. In the US, guns are often associated with self-defense and personal protection, while in Canada, they are primarily viewed as tools for hunting and sport. Dr. Noah Schwartz, who explores these cultural differences in his book, On Target, Gun Culture, Storytelling, and the NRA, explains how these cultural distinctions have shaped attitudes toward gun ownership in both countries.
Guns in Canada, gun ownership is very much centered around hunting, sport shooting, things like that. There isn't that same culture of armed self-defense. Armed self-defense is a very taboo topic in Canada, even within Canada's community of gun owners, Canada's gun culture. It's very rare to hear people sort of talking openly about it.
Another key difference is the process of obtaining a firearm. In Canada, strict licensing requirements create an additional barrier that naturally limits ownership to those who are truly committed to hunting or sport shooting.
Because of the laws in Canada surrounding gun ownership, there's a higher barrier to entry. So to get your gun license in Canada, it's quite a process. You have to take a class, there's a test, regular background checks. So it just serves as kind of an initial barrier to get over, that if someone maybe isn't really interested in becoming a hunter or a sports shooter, they're not going to bother going through that process.
These cultural and legal differences help explain why gun violence, and particularly mass shootings, are far less common in Canada than in the United States. Yet, despite these differences, the U.S. still plays a significant role in shaping the gun control conversation in Canada.
The gun control debate in Canada, there's a huge presence of the United States sort of looming above that debate. With regards to school shootings, certainly they are seen as an American problem.
While Canada has taken a different path, the reality of school shootings remains a uniquely American crisis, one that continues to shape debates, policies, and, most importantly, the lives of students across the country. While the issues of gun violence is debated at policy level, the voices that matter most are those of the students who experience its impact firsthand. School shootings are often discussed in statistics and headlines. But what do American students themselves think about this crisis? To better understand their perspectives, I surveyed 73 students from 20 different states across the United States. 52% of whom were high school students and 48% college students. Their responses revealed the profound impact that school shootings have had on their sense of safety, education, and daily lives. For American students, the fear of school shootings isn't just a distant possibility, it's a reality they live with every day. But how much does it actually weigh on their minds? When asked how often they think about the possibility of a school shooting happening at their own school, 21% of students said they think about it frequently. More than half, 53%, said it crosses their mind occasionally. That means nearly 3 out of 4 students are regularly considering the threat of gun violence in their schools. This fear isn't just in the background, it's affecting students' mental health. When asked if concerns about school shootings have increased their anxiety, stress, or depression over the past year, 58% of students said yes. More than half of these students are carrying the weight of this fear daily. For most students, school is supposed to be a place of learning, friendships, and growth. But for nearly half of the students surveyed, the fear of a school shooting has made them question whether they should even walk through the doors. When asked if this fear has ever influenced their decision to attend school, 47%, almost 1 in 2 students, answered yes. But it doesn't stop at the school day. When asked if they had ever avoided school or any school-related events, like football games, dances, or assemblies, due to fear of a shooting, 48% of students answered yes. For many students, the fear of a school shooting doesn't just exist in the back of their minds. It shapes their interactions, their friendships, and their sense of trust in those around them. When asked if they have ever distanced themselves from friends or classmates due to fear or anxiety about school safety, nearly 1 in 3 students, 32%, answered yes. That means for thousands of students across the country, the fear of violence has not only affected their sense of security, but also has impacted their social lives. But for some, this fear isn't just hypothetical, it's personal. When asked if they or someone they know has ever been directly affected by a school shooting, 8% of students said they were present during an incident. Another 36% said someone close to them had been involved. That means nearly half, 44%, of the students surveyed have a direct connection to a school shooting. It's not just something they see on the news, it's something they've lived through or know someone who has. For today's students, school shootings aren't just a tragic event that happens somewhere else. They're a recurring headline, a constant presence on their screens, and a reality they can't ignore. When asked how often they encounter news or social media coverage about school shootings, nearly half, 47%, said frequently. Another 40% said that they see it occasionally. That means the vast majority of students, 87%, are regularly confronted with reports of school violence. But what impact does this exposure have? Is the media simply informing students, or is it shaping their sense of security? When asked if media coverage, whether on social media or the news, affects how safe they feel at school, 73% of students answered yes. For them, every new report of a shooting, every live-streamed lockdown, every headline, makes their own school feel less safe. With school shootings frequently making headlines, students are not only consuming the news, they're feeling its weight. The fear doesn't end when they turn off their screens. It follows them into the classroom, onto the bus, and through the hallways of their own schools. For some, it's enough to make them question whether they even want to show up at all. When asked if seeing media coverage of school shootings affects their desire to attend school, 62% of students answered yes. The images, the statistics, the live coverage of yet another tragedy, it all adds to the growing anxiety, making school feel less like a place of learning and more like a potential target. But beyond personal fear, there's a bigger concern. Does media coverage itself, play a role in fueling more school shootings. When asked if media coverage increases the likelihood of school shootings occurring, 75% of students answered yes. They believe that with every news cycle, with every viral post, the risk doesn't just feel greater, it becomes greater. This raises a critical question. Is the media simply reporting on a crisis, or is it amplifying one? With school shootings being a uniquely American crisis, the question remains why? What do students believe is fueling this epidemic? When asked what they believe is the main cause of school shootings in America, the answers were divided, revealing the complexity of the issue. The most common response, 34%, pointed to access to firearms. Close behind, 32% of students identified mental health issues as the root cause. Other factors included bullying at 12%, lack of school security measures at 10%, and media influence at 6%. Despite differing opinions on the cause, one belief was overwhelmingly clear. The government's response has not been enough. When asked if they believe the U.S. government's response to school shootings has been adequate, 58% of students answered no. More than half of students feel that not enough is being done to protect them, that the cycle of tragedy continues without meaningful change. So what should be done? For most students, the answer lies in policy reform. When asked if changes to gun policies in the U.S. would help prevent school shootings, 86% of students answered yes. The majority believe that without legislative action, the fear, the loss, and the trauma will only continue. For years, school shootings have been seen as a distinctly American tragedy. But do students recognize this crisis as uniquely American? The answer is a resounding yes. When asked if they believe school shootings are more prevalent in the U.S. than in other countries, 89% of students answered yes. They see the pattern, they see the headlines, and they see a reality that students in other nations don't have to face. But why? Why do other developed countries experience fewer school shootings than the United States? When asked what they believe is the biggest factor, the majority, 56%, pointed to stricter gun laws in other countries. 16% attributed it to cultural differences, while 14% believed better mental health support plays a role. 8% cited different school environments, and 6% said the cause was a combination of factors. The overwhelming message? Students believe that America's crisis is not inevitable. It's preventable. But the solutions will require change. The question now is, what will it take?